is over there saying, oh, come on. Even if you pull this off, you're going to pay more than you ever thought. You want anarchy and chaos unleashed, pull this secession nonsense and see what happens. You want your homes devastated, you're going to get it. But Sam is, a quiet voice of reason in a section of the country in Texas that is convinced that their worst fears are coming true, that the Kansans are going to be unleashed, that the blacks will be freed, that everything they fear is going to not only come home to roost, because it apparently already has, it's just going to get worse. And so we have a secession convention put together without the sanction, really, of the government. Well, ultimately, the legislature did approve it because many of the legislators have been elected as delegates to that convention by that time. But it is interesting to note, here we come back again from the big down to the small focus, Cook County, North Texas. In the midst of all this, there were still some people saying, wait a minute. The secession convention voted 168-7 to approve the ordinance and send it out. This is the first man to stand up and say, no, I'm not voting against, I'm voting against this ordinance. And of course, there's the famous story where the people started yelling out of the galleries and booing and hissing, and Throckmorton from McKinney, Collin County, the district, the wheat growing belt, stood up and said, Mr. President, when the rabble hiss, well may patriots tremble. He had guts. He just happened to be in the vast minority. He said no. 6 others stood with him to say no. They did their best to say, this is not the best idea for us at this point in time, people. Calm down a bit. The one thing this convention did do, in response to Sam Houston in the legislature, is they did agree to let the people in Texas vote on slavery. Once again, Cook County, North Texas, gets a little bit of light shown upon them as not being in touch with what's going on, or not being in step. These are the counties that voted against secession. Throckmorton's home county of Collin. Cook is one of them. We always have our explanations for this. We talk about this being the frontier counties, worried about things like what? How about protection from Indians? How about keeping the U.S. Army there to keep you shielded from what's going on in Kansas? Or to be totally crass in an economic story, which I tend to be at times, who's your damn best customers for hay and wheat? The U.S. Army, right? Why run off your best customers, who also happen to be protecting you? We talk about the German Upper South dominated counties here. Talk about Angelina County as an anomaly. All of that means, though, as we come back up here, what does this reveal? It reveals that Throckmorton speaks for a large proportion of people up in Cook County, if you've done your math, who don't own slaves. They're from the Upper South, which is also deeply divided over the issue of secession. States like Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, and Virginia. While Gulf Southerners, slaveholders, are the sheriffs and the legislators and the leaders, they're the ones that dominate the economy. There's this strong belt of Tennesseans and not so long ago Missourians. And if you know your Civil War history, you know those states deeply divided over the issue of secession. They're up here in these areas. What does that mean for them? Well, now if Texas joins the Confederacy, and it does, they become suspect, don't they? This doesn't really matter at first. William C. Young, largest slaveholder in the county, Mexican War veteran, former U.S. Marshal, tax collector, state legislator. I mean, typical community leader. You know, fill-in-the-blank guy, go-to guy for doing everything you need to keep your community running. He steps up and says he'll command a regiment. And a regiment of Cook County boys became organized as the 11th Texas Cavalry. And yes, they had some from the neighboring counties as well. But William C. Young of Cook County led the 11th Texas Cavalry where? Not to Virginia, not even to anywhere east of the river first. What's their first and greatest worry? He heads north, doesn't he? He quickly takes his regiment and other units north into the Indian Territory, replaces those Union garrisons with Confederate soldiers to form a buffer against Indians, against the threat from Kansas. We've seen Young fulfills what the people of Cook County, even if they didn't support secession, his men enlisted to take care of the things that did concern them, didn't he? And I can say that with almost a certainty because after the first year of service, we see Young gets a letter, blowing himself apart at Shiloh and all Antietam and all these battles. What are these Cook County frontier Texas folks thinking about? Protecting their families from Indians, getting the crop in, watching to see if those crazy people from Kansas ever show up, keeping their eyes on the slaves at home. They're thinking about the home front. And until April or May of 1862, this was legally okay. You could stay at home. You could sit out the war. That's all right. It's okay to be neutral. The Confederacy's dying by early 62. I mean, literally dying. It's been kicked out of New Mexico with its grand plans there. It's been pushed out of Missouri and is losing Arkansas fast. The first Confederate capital has already fallen into Union hands. That's Nashville. They've lost New Orleans. The Carolina coast is occupied by bluecoats. What on earth are they going to do to survive? So the Confederacy comes up with a program to feed its armies. First, a draft. First draft in U.S. history, April 1862. This will ultimately grow to include everybody from the ages of 17 to 65. Unless you can get an exemption or come up with a hacking cough or sever a limb or something. Ultimately, we think the Confederacy mustered about 80% of its men. Now, you didn't actually go into frontline units. If you were 17 years old, you went into junior reserve battalions. Anybody over 60 went into senior reserve battalions. But, you know, as they remarked in the last fights over at North Carolina at Fort Fisher, the Union troops were aghast to come across some of the last defensive lines in front of Fort Fisher, and there's dead guys with gray hair in the ditches. They weren't expecting that. They're senior reserve battalions. They've been mustered. They're there to defend their state. They died in the ditches. So, on the draft, can you just stay home now? No. If you say I'm staying home, then you are a suspect. You have broken the law. You might be a traitor. Second, how do you feed all these people? Taxes. Program of taxation. So now, you've got to help feed this army, this cause that you don't quite believe in. You don't have a lot of money to begin with anyway, but now you got taxes to pay. Third is impressment. Taxes will only get so much stuff for this Confederate army that is struggling to survive, so there is an impressment program enacted as early as 61, tuned up in 62. That means you can come to your house, you got 2 cows, they can take 1. Now, they're going to pay you for it. It's called an IOU. $100. Fair market value for that cow. Can you drink the milk off an IOU? They take your pig and give you an IOU, how much bacon you got for the winter. We get a little resentment, won't it? The Confederacy needs it. It must survive. Now, sometimes they pay you in cash. How much is Confederate money worth? About 63, 64. How much? Again, you can't eat paper, right? And then the worst of all, sequestration. Now, as far as we know, yeah, y'all trying to spell that word, don't worry about it. It means the impressment of enemies. Instead of taking, impressment means they take your stuff, you're a friend, they'll give you an hour, you give you money for it. Sequestration means your neighbor has turned you in as an enemy, and they take your stuff and don't pay you for it. They take everything. They are confiscating the property of alien enemies. The records are not real clear on this. Generally, it was not something that was very commonly done, but can you imagine living with the threat that that could be done by the district court? If your neighbor decides you're a member of a peace party conspiracy, then they come and take your stuff. Your house, your barn, whatever. So by the summer of '62, it had become illegal to sit on the sidelines, didn't it? You gotta be drafted if you're a male of the right age. You gotta pay your taxes. If they come and take one of your pigs or hogs or a crib full of corn or whatever, you gotta let them do that and smile and say thank you when they hand you that piece of paper. But if you don't want to do that, if you live in a place like Cook County, which is relatively poor, if you don't want to do all this, well, we have an answer for that too. We impose martial law in Texas. Brigadier General Paul Hebert imposed martial law, and provost marshals were assigned for every county, whose job it was to see that the draft is carried out, taxes are collected, that impressment of goods is done if necessary, and perhaps any alien enemies ferreted out. For Cook County, we get James G. Borland. He was the provost marshal. An old friend of William C. Twitty. Twitty recommended him to be the provost marshal. Twitty and Borland had worked together chasing Indians before the war. They had served together in that regiment that almost went to the Mexican War. Borland has served in several public offices. He's a very well-known fellow. He's also the go-to guy when Indians attack and somebody has to lead Texas Rangers, volunteers into the field. Borland's your man. He'll get several commands before the Civil War, leading people out into the field. He's a hard man, though. People recall he is not a man that sees the world in shades of gray. He's a slaveholder. Kind of interesting how he became a slaveholder. Maybe this explains part of his hardness. He was actually a tax collector for the Republic of Texas in the Red River District when a small U.S. Navy crew had a broken steamboat and they landed on the Texas side. And Borland went down there to tell them to get their butts out of Texas, that they're U.S. And, well, what they did is they beat the crap out of him, tied him into a tree, and left him there. That got him a $25,000 settlement from the U.S. District Court for this indignity that he had done to a tax official. That's how he got his state money to come to Cook County. He bought slaves with it, bought property, settled in Cook County, and is now a made man. Maybe he's still pissed off at those Yankees for beating the crap out of him down into a tree. I've always wondered. Love that story. It's actually in the record. But Borland's the guy in charge. He's going to enforce conscription, the taxes, etc. And he will brook no nonsense. There's a popular story. Mike and I have talked about this a lot if I can find the documentation, but I think it speaks well of his reputation. Allegedly, a man was brought into his provost court having dodged the draft. He was given a choice: we will hang you or we will send you into the army. Being a prudent gentleman, he took going in the army. His wife made intemperate remarks during the man's trial. So after he went off to the army, women or men dressed as women showed up at her house and hanged her in front of the kids. It's an object lesson of don't cross authorities in Cook County. Whether it happened or not, it's a heck of a story, and it reflects a heck of an attitude about how the Confederates were keeping the peace in North Texas against those who dissented against taxes, the draft, sequestration, and impressment. So how does the governor get involved? Well, to Borland came some gentlemen in late summer of '62 said, boss, there's a story here that we've got a conspiracy amongst us, a peace party conspiracy. Now, apparently their main purpose is to dodge the draft. What came out later in discussions was if a draft officer came to your house, you'd run out the back door to your neighbor's house, give the secret signal, you're tugging on your earlobe or tapping your nose or whatever it might have been, and your neighbor would shelter you and hide you in his barn or whatever until the draft people came away. A lot of men who enlisted in the peace party, that's pretty much what they understood they had joined that. It was something that would help them stay on the sidelines. But in the midst of that discussion, of that investigation, there were some loudmouths, I would call them, I guess, who bragged about more. Oh no, we are in communication with the people in Kansas. We've made contact with some of the Union supporting Indians in the Indian Territory, and they're going to come down here in mass numbers, and Union troops are going to be sent in here. We're going to take North Texas out of the war. And I mean, they'd say all the usual trite remarks that you used with the old Indian fighters. We're going to kill all the men and take all the women and children for our own. Maybe we'll kill the children because nits make lice. That was always a famous line. Nits make lice. Beer-fueled conversation, right? There are saloons all over Gainesville and County. So Borland puts together an investigating committee.